River First Nation in northern British Columbia. We're just enjoying a coffee in Vancouver today, talking about giving First Nations back control of their lives and their money, and making resource projects go ahead. Thanks very much for being part of it, Trevor.
You bet, thank you.
Yeah, can I call you Trevor, by the way?
Sure.
I'm very informal. I'm a first name basis guy. You're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Yeah, there is a lot of things we could talk about. I was just thinking when I paid for this coffee, it's twice as much as it was 2 years ago.
Double.
Double.
That's just inflation.
It's just inflation.
And have you seen prices rise in northern BC?
Yes, I have. Prices have risen. The cost of living is twice as much as it was in the past.
Right.
And even picking up fuel, now I have to bring $400 for a full tank.
Wow.
In the past, it was about $175.
What do you drive?
I drive a F-150.
Right. Well, why aren't you riding your bicycle?
Because I have a wheelchair.
Why aren't people in the north riding bicycles?
It's cold.
Yeah.
It's snowy.
And why aren't they taking electric cars?
There's no charge stations.
There's no charge stations in northern British Columbia and in most of northern Canada. And so the idea that people can just plug into an electric car to avoid paying carbon tax is a little bit impractical, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there might be one or two plugins, but there's not enough for the 30,000 people, 30,000 cars that are there.
Right. So Chief Trevor from Dog River First Nation is the chief, and he's just commenting on the doubled price of a cup of coffee. And tell me other prices that you've seen go up in your community over the last couple of years.
The price of food.
Price of food doubled.
Doubled.
In what time frame would you say that doubling has happened?
From the beginning of COVID, probably in the last 4 years, it's doubled. Yeah. And like the price of beef, we have many beef farmers and ranches in our area, and there's a lot of slaughterhouses, but the beef's not trucked very far. But
right.
Still, it's doubled.
Well, the federal government has run $500 billion of inflationary deficits, and all that cash is bidding up the cost of all goods. Then they're hitting the country with this carbon tax. BC has its own carbon tax, but the Trudeau government is forcing them to triple it. What would be the impact of tripling the carbon tax on gas, heat, and groceries for your First Nation in northern BC?
They would be huge.
Yeah.
We don't have natural gas in our community. We've been requesting gasification for years.
Right.
And that's,
so what's the heating source?
Heating source is propane.
Propane.
So we have to get propane trucked into our community, and some of our elders are living on old age pension, and that's being cut. So, and we can't make it.
And again, how much to fill up your truck, your Ford F-150?
About 240, somewhere in there.
240. How many times do you fill up in, say, a month?
In a month? Well, probably three, 4 times a month.
Right. And so you're getting hammered on gas, hammered on food, hammered on heat, and basically this inflation is robbing people of their ability to provide for themselves. And then on top of that, the government makes it hard for people to get resource projects approved. So the paychecks with which we pay for that rising cost of living are under attack. My goal is to basically get the government off the backs and out of the way of the Canadian people, to let them earn bigger, more powerful paychecks, and then reduce the cost of government so we can reduce the cost of living. What do you think of that approach?
I think that's a great approach.
Would you get rid of the carbon tax?
I would.
And get rid of the anti-development laws that prevent projects from going ahead?
Yes, I would stop importing oil.
Right.
We have our own resources right here in Canada. We
right.
should be using our own stuff.
Turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. My goal is to end overseas oil imports within 5 years of becoming Prime Minister. We have the resources right across this country. BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and of course Newfoundland all have oil production, and we can unleash more of that in the cleanest, greenest possible way and use some of the federal proceeds to incentivize greener energy. But furthermore, in First Nations lands, I believe that the resource revenue should stay with the First Nations people, not go to the bureaucrats in Ottawa. What do you think of that approach?
I think that's a great approach.
Right. What would it mean for your people?
It would mean a significant increase in economy participation.
Right.
That's what I would think.
So right now, the model is that a lot of the revenues from resource development goes to the federal government. First Nations then are forced to apply for some of it back, ask for funding agreements, deal with a lot of bureaucracy. Do you find that slow and cumbersome to deal with?
Yes, it is very slow and cumbersome. We're a progressive First Nation, and we have one of the first urban reserves in BC, and it took us 3 years. Luckily, we had some of the workers and the people that were dealing with our paperwork in Ottawa help us out and actually took a vested interest in seeing our nation pull ahead. That's why it took 3 years.
Right.
But with limited resources, that department needs to be sufficiently have the resources to go and deal with most of the applications for First Nation.
What I'd like to see is less paperwork, less of applications, and more funding directly from resource projects to the First Nations on whose land the project goes. And that way, you don't have to worry about Ottawa. You can make your own decisions with your own money. Would you agree with that approach?
Yes, I would agree with that approach. My community has always wanted to be self-reliant.
Yeah.
We don't want our handout. We want to be part of the economy, local economy.
Well, when I talked earlier today with a journalist about this proposal of letting First Nations keep more of their direct resource revenue, the journalist said, well, what about oversight? Who's going to provide oversight? Well, the question implies that the bureaucrats in Ottawa know how to spend money properly, and that the First Nations don't. In fact, the opposite is proving increasingly true. Look, they're wasted $54 million on this ridiculous ArriveCan app that could have been designed for $300,000. They're contracting out to high-priced consultants that charge $1,500 a day per person just to pass the work on to yet another company. Anybody who thinks that we need more oversight from Ottawa has not been seeing how badly Ottawa is run. First Nations people make best use of their resources and their money because they have to in order to survive, and have done that for thousands of years. Maximized use of limited resources. They don't need bureaucrats in Ottawa talking down, looking down, and giving instructions from above. They can make those decisions for themselves. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I support that 100%.
And would you say your community does a better job of managing its money than the Ottawa bureaucracy and politicians do?
We do. We reinvest in our own people every day.
Good. And get more results. And you're accountable to your people.
We are.
Right. Well, that's what we need. I ran for Prime Minister to give people back control of their lives, make this the freest nation on earth. We need to give First Nations the opportunity to escape from all of the controls that the Indian Act imposes, and get the gatekeepers out of the way so that they can fully achieve their potential. So thanks for working with me on that, Chief, and I can't wait to get up to enjoy some country food and some of your wonderful traditions. I understand May is the best time to come for a visit.
It is, third week of May and third Thursday of every May.
Third Thursday of every May. And what can we expect?
We can expect about 650 kids doing a cross-cultural educational period with our community.
Okay.
And showing our true culture with everyone, and teaching the locals about us, who we are, why we're there.
Excellent. I'll be there, and also want to reaffirm that we're going to defend your right to hunt, as you've done for thousands of years on this land, and stop Trudeau's rifle ban, which is a ridiculous, for everybody, but a particularly egregious attack on our First Nations. We want to honor your traditions and learn from them. And thank you very much for being part of this conversation. I can't wait to get up and visit you and your entire community, hopefully in May.
For sure.
All right, thanks a lot, my friend.
Thank you.